Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We're going to start off first with a map showing the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation. There had been a weak low that had moved through this area, and although it is falling apart, the low-level atmospheric flow is continuing to push moisture through the Ohio River Valley over the Appalachian Mountains, and it's going to add more storm activity right over here to the coast, where we've recently brought in some precipitation that is much needed. There will be a cutoff low that's going to be developing over Texas, which is going to continue to add to the rainfall stresses, the flooding stresses we have in this area. To show you that flow, a lot of what's going to be happening not only now, but through, I think, the majority of June and into July will be dependent on this high. This is in the low levels of the atmosphere. You can see the flow kind of convergent in this area, pulling up here along the east coast of the United States as we look out here over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. We did have some storms that moved through parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin today too on this frontal boundary here, but I would like to step you up a bit in the atmosphere and show you that cutoff low that is going over Texas. It's right here. The problem is the flow to the north of it is going to just stay to the north of it. And this ridge that's building in place here, bringing in all that heat, is going to advect over to the east, which means move over to the east and leave this cutoff low sitting and spinning. But what that will eventually do is pull in a lot of Gulf moisture, and we're going to get to that part of this forecast in just a few moments. First, where the rain is now going through is helping out with the long-standing drought situation over in the mid-Atlantic. But will we be returning moisture to the places that really need it in this part of the Corn Belt? And can we get it to stay away from Texas, where we have 3 climate reporting districts having their wettest such time period, May through early June, on record? Well, unfortunately, Texas has got a lot more precipitation coming. Before I show you that, let's at least take a look at the latest drought monitor. This was released early this morning here on Thursday, June 3rd. And what I would like to do is not only just take kind of a big picture view of where drought is, but let's go up here to the top, hover over maps, come down to change maps. And what I want to do here is I want to click on that and then show you how much the drought monitor has changed over the last few weeks here. So let's take this out to the last 8 weeks, and we can see here where over the last couple of months drought has gotten worse. This is where we've seen some degradation, also right in through here, while much improvement in the drought situation has happened from Texas up to the high plains. But this has been too much rain and too frequent, and it's been quite cold in this area as well, and this is really having a negative impact on the start of this growing season here in the high and southern plains. Meanwhile, over that same time period, we've gotten drier along the west coast. Okay, we need to compare that to soil moisture. This is the top 16 inches. We have a lot of saturated soil in through this corridor here. Rains are moving through some of the drier pockets in this section here of the Tennessee and Ohio Valley over toward the Appalachian Mountains and also here along the East Coast. But I want to just take note of a few areas right in through here that are going to need a lot more moisture to help the profile recover. And why I say that is, if at any point during the next few months we go over hotter and drier, these are going to be the areas that are going to just automatically be susceptible to rapid onset of drought or flash drought. Over the next week, brand new European data just released here late this afternoon. This is what the next week's worth of precipitation anomalies look like. And once again, we are adding more rain to those climate reporting districts that are already having record-setting rains in the month of May and early June. So I like to see the moisture in this area, but too much there. Our problem is where this next ridge is coming in, keeping much of the Corn Belt, the western Corn Belt, and the plains very dry, whereas we could get some better storms farther to the north. As this pattern all evolves, I'm going to show you, getting out into next week, prepare for very high humidity air. This is a map of precipitable water, and with that cutoff low coming out of Texas and the big ridge running over the top of it, that high pressure cell here is going to be able just to pump a lot of moisture in. If I get those drawings off there, you're going to be able to get, well, up to 2, maybe 2.5 inches of precipitable water in the atmosphere. Will it rain out is going to be dependent on the thunderstorm activity. Let's go take a look at it. We're going to go through this relatively quickly. We've seen here that over the next 24 hours that the first system, as it squeezes that moisture out here along the coast, the convergent flow, remember it's coming in like this and like that, we're going to continue to see better chances of storms through Friday morning into Friday afternoon and evening along the coast. After that, what we're going to watch is 2 things. There's our cutoff low, and you're going to see the Gulf of Mexico just open wide up. Watch the flashes through Saturday into Sunday and Monday. Did you see this area just grow in here? That is where, coming around this high, the flow is pumping in that moisture. And it's going to do that out into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. Now, the models are attempting to develop a low pressure center here by midweek next week. At this stage, the flow seems to open up too much to keep a nice tight little trough through there to bring in a lot of rain into the Dakotas before we get deep into next week. Instead, I think it's going to be producing more storms in the Canadian Prairie. See what I mean? We go out here to next Wednesday, Thursday, and to Friday. And what you just notice over that time period, if I let it all kind of add up through the next week, you end up getting this. Here is through, let's go all the way out to Monday morning. So our cutoff low, heavy rains down south. The first system exiting, the flow around the high adding more moisture here. But if you're in the Corn Belt, in the Central Plains, Northern Plains, Prairie, very limited chances of getting rain, just some scattered storms. Then into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, that is when the flow opens up and we start to see better moisture return farther to the north. I'm going to have to wait to see if this low right in through here, which I address in my longer video, actually materializes at some point next week to return rain to the Dakotas, a place that desperately needs it. So, getting out there longer term, this is what the pattern suggests. By day 10, trough, with a ridge in the midsection of the country. Now, what's interesting is the GFS model takes that pattern and gives us this week 2 precipitation pattern. It's drier here in the Midwest around the Great Lakes, wetter in the plains, but dry along the Gulf Coast. Now, why I'm saying that with a little bit of confusion is because the European model also has a trough and a ridge in this area. But the subtle differences in the flow between the GFS and the European give us this look for week 2. It's much drier in through this area. I'll put a D over it. Much drier in through that area in the European model, and wetter pushing through these areas out into week 2. The European models had the higher skill scores, so despite having similar patterns, you should favor what the European model is saying here, because both models are picking up on the same thing overall. So, temperature discussion. Yeah, we've been very cold on the eastern side of the Rockies, while triple-digit heat's built as far north as the Columbia Basin and the Snake River Valley. Well, that heat is spreading east over the next 5 days. We will continue to see temperatures in the upper 90s, lower 100s here, while the cutoff low and clouds and rain keep it cooler to the south. Going from there, just remember, that is going to really increase evaporation rates in the north. Some places here may see over the next 7 days 1.5 to up to 2.5 inches of water evaporated out of the soil and out of the vegetation. That's what happens when we bring in such extreme heat. And just so you know, this area up here will have a greater than 70-degree swing in temperatures in a 70-day time period. From there, going all the way out to day 10, so this is about the 13th, this is going to be the area that we're going to see the greatest heat, more like midsummer and even extreme here in parts of the Dakotas. So this is a terrible recipe for what has lately happened here in the Dakotas. And now that you've seen the lack of precip, we start to get really concerned. Okay, to finish this up, I would like to go back to the upper level flow pattern, because I look out here all the way to the middle of the month and we just see the pattern doing this. Now, I've talked about this a lot, and I'm saying here that the models seem to be defaulting to climatological average, putting a ridge right there. And why I'm worried about this is because when I go for the primary corn and soybean belt and look at the hottest Junes on record, they often feature a ridge here over about Minnesota, and another one out here in the open Atlantic Ocean. So the flow ends up going around it just like that. That's a pattern that tends to stagnate and kind of get stuck. The European model has bought into this, and this just came out as I was recording the longer briefing a few moments ago, and caught me a bit by surprise because we had been worried about this happening, but the dryness coming up in the next week, well, the European model from June 13th to July the 13th now went drier in this area. That was a drying trend, and a lot of it had to do with the flow pattern staying around like this and just not deviating away from this. Now, what I'll finish with is just a very quick discussion on these ocean temperatures. We've continued to see the cooler water, which is indicative of the negative Pacific meridional mode, stay that way. And it's actually gotten lower. So the values through May have now moved over to about 2.5 to 3 standard deviations below the mean. So the significance here is this. When we look at that, what we remember is that tends to produce ridging here, and here in summer. Now, it's not the only factor, but it's one of the more dominant factors. So until the MJO emerges as a more dominant factor, or something shifts in the flow of the jet stream, for example, if it gets blocked up, this is one of our leading indicators moving forward. And therefore, now that we've seen some of the dryness concerns coming in here, what I'll be thinking about is, did the European model, which was run earlier this month, pick up on this earlier than most other models? These data are going to get updated on Saturday, and I'll send out a special report via email when those new data come in. So that was our quick update. Hopefully you got a good picture of what's going on. I'll talk to you again on Monday. Thanks.